Princeton, North Carolina. Welcome to our Wesley Bible study. I know we have quite a few people who are looking at us online. Hope you're getting a lot out of this, but I haven't heard from any of you yet, other than a few chats as we go through the program. So if you have any questions or comments or snide remarks, you can send them to revlev@ncc.umc revlev@nccumc.org. There we go. I'm getting older, so it's harder for me to get into all this stuff. All right. But today we're going to do the second chapter of Joshua. This is a wonderful story, and I remember as a child in Sunday school they talked about the spies in Jericho and Rahab, and there's a lot that they left out of the story because they didn't want to explain to children what prostitution was all about. So anyway, we're going to get into some of that. This is something after my own heart, in a way, because I spent a good deal of my time, not with prostitutes. Oh, we're going to have fun with this one. But I spent a lot of time in the intel business. This tie tack that I'm wearing is the insignia for military intelligence, and I had a number of years in that. I know a little bit about how intelligence operations work, and so when I read this story, it's like, and it's so funny because the commentaries have no idea how this thing is, how it works out. But we're going to get into some juicy details today. Anyway, there are several branches of intelligence. Each one of them operates fairly independently. One of them is electronic intelligence, and there are varieties of that. There are electronic intelligence that looks for electronic emissions like radars and things. And then there are other electronic intelligence that look for communications. And about 90% of all usable intelligence comes from the communications electronics. But there are other ones. There is satellite intelligence. We get a lot from that. There is also what we call human intelligence, and that's where you get into the world of spies. There's also a lot in counterintelligence, and I was involved in both intel and counterintel. There's also a portion of intelligence that has to do with propaganda and lies and morale and things like that, and we're going to get into some of that because there's some of that in the story as well. So anyway, this is the cool thing. So Joshua needs to know what's going on in enemy territory. They're going to be taking the city of Jericho, so he sends some spies across the river to check it out. These spies are not named, whereas the first time that Joshua and Caleb, who started their careers as spies, they are named. And it was the spying operation that gave Joshua his credibility with Moses, because he and Caleb came back, the only two positive reports that they got from their scouting out of the Promised Land. I love the way that they countered the other spies' reports. The other spies said, "Oh, there are giants in the land, and they're very armed, and they're walled cities, and da-da-da-da-da-da." And sometimes you can look at an adversary and say they're too much for us. There's no way that we can overwhelm them. I remember years ago, back in the 70s, the intel community would publish a glossy picture of all the latest Soviet weapons. And a lot of their photographs came from the May Day parades because they paraded all their new stuff down the streets in Moscow, the only paved street in Moscow. So
really?
That's what I feel like.
Okay.
You have to understand that Russia consists of things that are glowing and things that are totally rotten. Okay, that's why the only place you can do skateboarding in Russia is in Moscow, because everything else is dirt road. But anyway, they paraded everything down the street, and they got photographs of it, and it really looks massive and everything, you know. Right now, he can't parade tanks because he's lost. I saw a picture, and I turned to one of my colleagues, another lieutenant, and I said, we can beat these guys. And he said, how do you know? I said, because it just looks massive. I said, check out the lug nuts on the trucks. And he's like, what? I said, look at the lug nuts on the trucks. So I looked at the lug nuts. These are green camouflage trucks, okay? The lug nuts are all painted white, okay? I said, if they're painting their lug nuts white, these are the only trucks that work, because they're ignoring all the other maintenance that goes with the truck, okay? It's just there to look good. So they're probably parading the only operating things that they've got in the Army. And I read another account by a former KGB agent, and that's basically true. If they were being inspected, they would, if they were inspecting tanks, they would roll out the tank with the good engine for the engine inspection. And then if they had to do a gunnery thing, they would tow a tank up to the range, because that's the only one with a working gun, you know. But Soviet Army and the Russian Army basically does not do well with maintenance. They don't do well with high-end skill sets. Most of their people are undertrained and badly led. So, you know, I took a look at that parade. I said, you know, we can beat these guys. Well, Joshua and Caleb came back and said, we can beat these guys. They saw something that the other spies didn't. So Joshua, son of Nun, sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, go to the land of especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and spent the night there. Well, that sounds seedy, doesn't it? Okay, let me give you a little background on how this works, okay? She is a prostitute with her own house. She is a prostitute who lives in an apartment in the wall of Jericho. Okay, I think they translated it badly, because she is not just a prostitute. She is what we would call a courtesan, and she's high-end. So if you are a spy and you want to find out what's going on, you go to the high-end prostitute who deals with all the officials of the city and find out what kind of pillow talk she's been picking up, because that's how it works. Okay, if you really want to get a sense of what's going on in town, you want to get as far up into the leadership as possible. This woman, I mean, I read the commentary and say, oh, this poor woman, she's living in her father's house and she's probably a prostitute to pay off her daddy's debts. Oh no, oh no. This is a family business. This is a Canaanite city. Prostitution is not, it's not a disreputable occupation. It's a family business. And daddy got her into prostitution because that's the way to make money, and the family's making a lot of money off the fact that this woman is working with the top brass of the Canaanites, okay? So she's got the intel that they want. You want to go to as high a source as you can get. And they all know in Jericho that if you want to get to the highest source information, you're going to go to that courtesan.
Sort of like the history of Kinston, as I know it.
Sugar Hill.
That's right.
How well do you
Don't
know it?
claim to be an expert now, Billy.
But that's true.
Yeah, we all know about Sugar Hill, right?
The Civil War.
In
Yeah.
Kinston. Yeah, there are those districts, okay? But, no, prostitution is one of the things that is just inimical to intelligence work. Every intelligence agency has used this as a way of gathering, or, well, not just gathering intel, but of compromising officials. It's just one of those. If you're going to be gathering intelligence, you want to look for a weakness in your adversary. And if the guy's married and visiting prostitutes, bingo, you've got something that you can lever against them. It's just the way it is. It's part of the way intelligence agencies do business. In other countries, they actually train prostitutes to do this. Okay, it's a regular factor. Spy agencies that have been sleeping with our officials, guy in Congress, and she started low and worked her way up through the bureaucracy and got to a congressman, and he slept with her for years. And it was like, oh well, maybe that wasn't such a good idea, and he had to leave some committees and eventually left Congress. Good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like Nancy Pelosi's driver was a communist agent, and for years. It's just stupid stuff. And people have these weaknesses, and if you can exploit them, you'll get a lot of information. Okay, so these guys go to the highest end courtesan in the town.
So they would probably pay her
Oh
for
yeah,
information.
yeah. This wasn't for free, but she wasn't looking for money from these guys. Okay. What they found out, well, let's see what they said. Okay. The king of Jericho was told some Israelites have come here tonight to search out the land. Then the king of Jericho sent orders to Rahab. Well, go figure, who's he been sleeping with? So he figures, okay, they're gonna go to the person who can compromise us the most. And they had their own counterintelligence working, because the town was in a panic, because they knew this whole Israelite group was going to come into their territory, and that's the first walled city in the territory. So they know that they're going to be under attack. Of course, they're going to have counterintelligence going on. They follow these guys. They know where they went. They all know that they went to the house of Rahab, and so that's the first place that the king goes to and orders her. Okay, this isn't a request. Bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come to search out the whole land. But the woman took the 2 men and hid them. Then she said, true, the men came to me, but I do not know where they came from. Oh, duh. Okay. Yeah. And when it was time to close the gate at dark, the men went out. Where the men went, I do not know. Pursue them quickly, for you can overtake them. She had, however, brought them up to the roof and hidden them in the stalks of flax she had laid out on the roof. Now, she lives in the wall of the city. What kind of roof does this woman have? Just saying. There are a few incongruities here. It might have been just like an awning or something like that they had. But anyway, it was accessible. Because not only did they get up there, she had, however, brought them up to the roof and hidden them with the stalks of flax that she had on the roof. So they also have a linen business. She's making linen. So that's cool. So the men pursued them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords. As soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. How about that? So they bought it. Before they went to sleep, she came up on the roof and said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land that you dread, and that dread of you has fallen on us from all, and all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no courage left in any of us because of you. The Lord your God is indeed God in heaven above and on earth below. Now then, since I have dealt kindly with you, swear to me by the Lord that you in turn will deal kindly with my family. Give me a sign of good faith that you will spare my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and will deliver their lives from death. All right. The commentator that I was looking through was talking about how this family, because of their poverty, had sold her into prostitution and blah blah blah. That's just stupid. That happens, okay, in a Canaanite city. Like I say, this is just another part of the family business, and she is highly regarded. Her family has status. because she's got connections. Okay? So if you've got any other business going on in town and your kid has connections at the highest levels of government, if you need a permit, you get a permit, you know. You need a tax break, you get a tax break. There are, you know, all kinds of things, ways that they can play this. So she's connect. The fact that she wants to save all of her family means that they did not do her wrong in her own mind. Okay? The men said to her, "Our life for yours. If you do not tell this business of ours, then we will deal kindly and faithfully with you when the Lord gives us the land." So she's looking for protection. She's not looking for money. Why isn't she looking for money? Because she doesn't need it. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was on the outer side of the city wall, and she resided within the wall itself. She said to them, "Go toward the hill country so that the pursuers may not come upon you. Hide yourselves there for 3 days until the pursuers have returned. Then afterward you may go your way." The men said to her, "We will be released from this oath that you have made us swear to if we invade the land and you do not tie this crimson cord in the window through which you let us down, and do not gather into your house your father, your mother, your brothers, and all your family." Now, where do we get the red light district tradition from? Just saying, it's biblical.
It's the oldest profession.
It's second oldest profession, yeah.
What's the first?
Intelligence. Okay, so the crimson cord has always been a marker for prostitution, red light district, you know. It's amazing what traditions you can get from your Bible. Okay, they departed and went into the hill country and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers returned. The pursuers had searched all along the way and found nothing. Then the 2 men came down again from the hill country. They crossed over, came to Joshua, son of Nun, told him all that had happened to them. And they said to Joshua, "Truly the Lord has given all the land into our hands. Moreover, all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear before us." Okay. Now we're talking psyops. That's called psychological operations. This is professional lying, and it has to do with propaganda. And it's what you do to demoralize your enemy. Okay? There is psyops being performed against us right now in this country. And a lot of people are having fun with it. Okay? It's called TikTok. And it's psyops. TikTok in this country is entirely different from psyops in China. Psyops in this country, TikTok, is there to infest the minds of young people by entertaining them and by infusing in them pro-Chinese propaganda. And also to keep them on their phones instead of in their textbooks. If you go to TikTok in China, it's all math, science, educational stuff, okay? You go to TikTok in this country, it's addictive. And it's meant to distract you from your family relationships. It's meant to distract you from your friends. It's meant to keep you on a phone instead of outside playing and getting exercise. It's meant to distract you from your studies. Okay, this is psychological operations. It's a Chinese mechanism. And there are people saying, "Oh, this is just innocent. You look how you change his face." Right. What they're doing is trying to change the face of China in the minds of young people in this country. And they are also addicting businesses to it to make it harder for us to get rid of TikTok. But not only does TikTok infuse this psyops into our country, they also, once you get that on your phone, they have access to everything on your phone, including all of your contacts and all your search history and everything else. And that all goes straight back to the Communist Party in China. Okay? All of your health information that you have on your phone gone, because you have TikTok on your phone. So I don't have TikTok, okay?
So I wonder why they won't stop it. I mean, I know there's a bill about banning TikTok, and it was a Trump, I don't know, one of them stepped in, which, of course, you can't tell.
That actually started
you can't
under
tell
the
him
past
anything, but
administration.
you know, when people know this, these guys up there ought to stop it.
Something that is both entertaining and money-making.
But if you can prove, like, and I agree with you. I think, I'm like, I don't have TikTok. I think it's bad. I don't like anything that comes from China anymore.
Right.
And, but, you know, these intelligent people, these business people,
It was part of the Trump campaign.
these people know that this is bad for our children. Our children are so gullible in
Yes.
this world. And so, why don't they stop it?
Lobbyists, and the lobbyists aren't just the owners of TikTok. The lobbyists are also the businesses that are making money off of TikTok. That's the primary lobby that's impeding the demise of TikTok in this country. Okay? These people are demoralized because of the stories of what they heard. You see a similar thing happening, and you saw this happening with the invasion of Genghis Khan in Europe, where they treated people so horribly, so terribly, that every city they came up to was in panic. And a lot of times the cities that they came up to could have withstood an attack. But part of the tactics that the Mongols had was to draw them out of those defensive positions. They were very effective at that. And what they would do is they would come up to the city with a small group, and they would attack the city with an understrength group. And then the people in the city would get overconfident, and they'd send their troops out to chase these people away. And when they chased them away, they would run into an ambush from the whole Mongol army, and they were outside the city. That was a tactic they used over and over and over again. It goes back to Murphy's Law of Combat. If your attack is succeeding, it's an ambush. So these people annihilated whole populations, including their kings, and word gets back to the Canaanites that not only are these people going to annihilate all of you, which they will, by the way, okay, but also they have God working for them, and God will part the waters of the Red Sea for them. And look what they did to the Egyptian army that everybody was afraid of. Okay, so they've got a bad rep going on, and the people in Canaan are just shaking in their boots about, you know, it doesn't matter that these people are outnumbered and under-equipped. You know, if they've got a God that works on their side, how can you fight that? And so they're demoralized. But this is part of, and this is God's, according to the Pentateuch and according to the book of Joshua, God is involved in psychological operations, and God is using terror to do it. Our God. Give it a thought. Okay? I mean, anybody, like, you look at what Putin's doing in Ukraine right now. Oh, he's under all kinds of sanctions and condemnation for attacking civilians and things like that. You know? This was a central theme of God's tactic in the conquest of Canaan. So I'm hoping, it looks like things have changed, that this is not the morality that we espouse today, especially as Christians. Okay? So we need to give some thought to this, because believe me, this stuff comes up every once in a while. Even within Christian community, it's about annihilating an enemy. And we just can't justify it anymore. That's not the way Christ told us to operate. You know, and one of the things that I think is unique about the United States in terms of its military operations from the mid-20th century on, okay, from the mid-20, well, maybe from World War I, but prior to World War I, this was not one of our operating tactics, okay, but after World War I, it became a tradition in this country that we do not conquer territories to occupy them and to dominate them. Okay? We do not have a colonialist bent to American military foreign policy. Prior to World War I, we did. We were very colonialist prior to World War I, and we advocated colonialism, not just in Europe, but we advocated it for the Japanese as well prior to World War I. So we have moved ahead from a national perspective, and even though a lot of countries are really ham-handed at mimicking this, it has become a generally accepted mindset among nations that you don't go in and conquer somebody else's territory and occupy it for your benefit. You don't. Colonialization is unpopular today, and that's one of the things that is militating against one of the things that Israel is talking about. And Israel has good reasons for this, but Israel is saying once we take over Gaza, we're going to take over Gaza. But they are talking about this as an interim form of control until the territory of Gaza is somehow managed to the satisfaction of the Israelis. It might be through an international agency or something like that, but it's got to be some kind of an entity that does not allow terrorists to control the area, and that it's going to be democratic and that it's going to be supportive of the nation of Israel.
Has that ever happened since Gaza was established?
What?
That it could withstand, that it could be on its own, government itself, without terrorists. I don't ever remember Gaza's trip ever being that way.
Yeah, the only time.
I'm not sure it ever will be that way.
Well, that's the thing. The only time that it was not a threat to the land of Israel was when the Israelis controlled it.
Correct.
That's the only time.
And it was part, I would assume it's part of the promised land that God gave Israel. So, and I think you said one Sunday, I said, why don't Israel just take it over? And you said they don't want it.
Well, they
and
don't.
that may be, you're probably right, but it just makes sense that they would take it over. I mean, I read an article, not getting off this, but a lot of the Palestinians work in Israel.
Yes.
They come across the border, they work in the hospitals, they're well paid, they get health care.
Yes.
They're treated very well.
Yes.
And they don't like the terrorists, but they're
No.
afraid of them. And they don't know how to
Well,
get rid of them.
you're seeing more and more demonstrations
You are.
against Hamas now.
You are.
Hamas has been weakened to the point that the people have risen up. This recent relief effort that's been taking place, you have American contractors, okay, highly specialized contractors who are now distributing food in Gaza, okay? And there was a queue, there was a crowd ready to get into the area where the stuff was being distributed. They were being held back by Hamas. That did not last long. Okay? And there was a distribution done this morning in Gaza. They said they had distributed about 800,000 meals without incident. Okay? But the contractors that we have in there are not contractors that you want to mess with.
Good.
Okay? They are highly skilled contractors.
That's the only way, I think, to get rid or suppress the terrorists is for them to fight them. I mean,
Yes.
we can't fight them. I mean,
Yes, we
can.
could.
Yeah, but it's, I just watched that Netflix thing about 9/11 and I mean, finding Osama bin Laden.
Yeah,
Holy
Yes.
cow.
yeah.
I mean, it's a way it's a mindset. It's not where they are.
It's who they are.
Right.
Yes,
They
it's who
can
they are.
be anywhere.
And that's why, if these people want to fight to the death, then they need to die. Okay? It's just like Japanese in World War II. There wasn't any way really to defeat the Japanese outside of the nuclear option. They just they didn't care if their whole population died. And this is true with Hamas. They don't care if their whole population dies. They want their population to have high casualties. They're reporting false casualties in this relief effort. They're saying that 75 people were killed in the process of distribution yesterday, and that did not happen. That's just another Hamas lie. So if anybody was injured, it was because they were trying to overcome the Hamas roadblock that was trying to keep them from getting into the area where the distribution was taking place. The Israelis didn't do it. So when you're dealing with people like this, sometimes they really don't leave you another option. And Israel's come to the realization that that's so. The rest of the world has been slow to that. Just the fact that they had I thought an incredibly lopsided, generous offer to try and get 10 hostages back from Hamas, and Hamas has turned them down. I mean, you're not dealing with people who really want to live. So they're just going to have to go in and root them out. I'm glad that we do not have military boots on the ground right now.
Israel's pretty good at that stuff.
They are extremely good at that stuff. They are extremely good. They're better at that stuff than we are.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And I read something also, here again, off our subject, but like the Palestinians were turning, and if there was a terrorist or a Hamas, they were putting this stuff on the roof of their car. Like you couldn't see it, but you could see it with the infrared.
Uh-huh.
So the Israelis would know that was a terrorist, and they're taking them out.
I am so impressed with their intel and their operations.
We could
It's
learn a
just-
lot from the Israelis.
Yes, we could learn a lot from the Israelis. Well, the Israelis are always boasting about that. It was kind of, we had a situation in Desert Storm. Now, you remember there were Scuds being thrown into Israel in order to get them into the fight, and getting them in would break up the Arab coalition that was supporting us in Desert Storm. That's what they were trying to do. They weren't trying to really kill Israelis. They were just trying to make them mad enough to come across the border, and all of a sudden the Arab coalition that was supporting us would fall apart. It didn't happen, okay? The Israelis, we convinced them to stay out of it. And one of the things that convinced them was that nobody had actually ever seen, even in Vietnam, no one had actually ever seen since World War II a complete American military operation happening in one place. Where we had units deployed where if you were at one end of the unit, you could never see the other end. The other side was too far away. The amount of equipment, I watched a convoy that was supporting 18th and 7th Corps go up through western Iraq, and that convoy was 22 miles long, bumper to bumper, 4 lanes wide on a 2-lane road. I mean, man, nobody had ever seen. When we put it in the field, it's massive. It is really massive. And to think that we were doing that at 2 ends of a country at one time was just phenomenal. You know, and like I said, it's like going from Wilmington, North Carolina to Dayton, Ohio. It was how far we went in 4 days. In a military I mean, this is just a juggernaut. If we ever put stuff in the field, it's just horrible. People have no idea how much destruction we can put in the field, and overhead, and underwater, and all the rest. So the Israelis were convinced that we could handle it. But they recognize that as good as they are, when it comes to comparing to the American forces, they're Bush League. So, got a report from one of the hostages that was released, said when Trump was elected, all of a sudden they started feeding them better, they stopped spitting on them, they stopped treating them badly, because they knew eventually these people were going to be released on camera. So, I mean, it makes a difference. It's not just what you have, it's a national will. And that's what we're talking about here. This is a national will. The Israelites have a national will that has confidence. The enemy has no confidence. And once you're fighting an enemy with no confidence, it doesn't matter what defenses they have or how big they are, they're done. Okay? So chapter 3, we're going to not quite get into Jericho. We got to get across the river, okay? But we're going to look at chapter 3 and see where it takes us. More propaganda, more psyops going on. Okay? See you next week.
Oh, yeah.